You have probably heard of tools like Subfinder, Nuclei, or even HTTPX. You even have probably seen a bunch of videos on the same exact channel covering how to use them. They are great tools. Don't get me wrong, they're not even the best tools Project Discovery has dropped in the recent years. And if all you're doing is running them out of the box, you're missing like 80% of what they can actually do for you. Here's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna walk you through setting up your own Recon box from scratch. We'll grab a VPS, load up all of the Project Discovery tools using their toolkit, and then I will show you how I tie all these tools together into a simple methodology. And by the end of the video, hopefully you know exactly when to use what, instead of just throwing tools at a target and hoping something sticks. But before we jump into this though, do me a favor, I do need your help. I'm looking into changing some of my content and I want to hear from you and I want to know what you want to learn from me. Do you want me to make more deep dives? Do you want to see more methodology videos like this one? Or do you want me to make more demos of bugs that I found on my pen test and bug bounties? Please do me a favor, drop me a comment down below and let me know so I can start making content that will teach you guys the most and help you crush it with your bug hunting in the upcoming year. All right, now let's jump into the video and quickly set up our VPS. So to do this, we're going to need a service provider that's going to give us a machine that we can use in the cloud. So what we're going to do quickly is go to hostinger.com/NahamSec. I'm going to scroll down all the way here, all the different plans that they have available. I'm going to just use KVM2 because it's going to give us enough power so we can do what we need. So I'm going to click on choose plan. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to keep it at 24 months and I'm going to go into here and type in my coupon, which will save you 10% and will also help run this channel with some credits that will help me make videos like this. And as soon as you do that, it will drop it to $150. The cool thing about this is that you get these prices for 2 years, but obviously you have the 12 months period as well that you can drop to 12 months, use the same code and so on. Then I'm going to scroll down all the way here. You have a couple of options now. The first one is the location of the server. So the closer it is to you, the better probably, or maybe to your targets even. I'm going to keep Phoenix, but if you're in Europe or if you're in Asia, you have these options as well. And then you have a couple of really cool options with the OS here. I know a lot of you guys are tryhards with Arch Linux. You can do that if you want. They also offer Kali Linux. If you want to use Kali on here, you can do that as well. I'm going to actually click on Ubuntu, and this is the one that I'm going to use throughout this video. But you have a couple more other cool options here. The first one is you can actually create a panel. If you have seen my previous videos, I use Cloud Panel a lot of times because it makes it easier to host your domains, host your websites, and so on. You also have other options here. We can do show more. There's a bunch more. The cool thing also is the applications. If you want to create some AI stuff using N8N, you can also do that right here. They also have a bunch of different workflows that you can use using the Hunter workflows right here. But you have all these other options. If you want to use Strapi, you have it. You want to do Redmine, if you want to develop some stuff, all these cool stuff is available too. You can just launch it with a button. And as soon as we're done here, we're going to go back to our OS, Ubuntu, click continue. It is going to take us to our card. It's going to ask us to log in, and then we're going to give it our credit card information, and then it's going to allow us to sign up and get our VPS. Now that the box is ready, we're going to quickly SSH into it, give it our password, and we're just going to connect to this box and start installing all the tools that we need. The first thing I usually do is install OMI-ZSH. It looks like it doesn't want to install it, so let's try it one more time. We're going to actually do a apt install ZSH, and as soon as that is installed, then we're going to install our OMI-ZSH right here really quickly. And now we have to make sure quickly that Go is installed on here. So I'm going to do a Go, nothing comes up. We're going to quickly install using apt install. It's going to do its thing for us really quick, install it, and then we can do all the other good things that we want to talk about during this video. And now quickly we run Go. It looks like it is there. And let me show you how quickly you can install all of the Project Discovery tools using this tool right here that is created to do all of the Project Discovery open source tool management within just a few buttons. We're going to just copy this, go into our terminal and install it. The reason why we installed Go earlier is because all of these tools that we're going to use throughout this video requires a Go programming language. So we're going to install it. Now that we have it, we're going to install this tool. And then using this, we can actually keep all of our Project Discovery tools updated or just select which ones we want to install or uninstall moving forward. But before we do that quickly, we have to set up our Go paths. I'm going to just do that really quick. Go into here. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and we're just going to quickly put that in there. We're going to do a source to make sure these all go into effect. And now if we do Go, it should work. So I'm going to try this command one more time. And now we have this ready and it tells us none of these tools are installed. And if we want to look at the help menu really quickly, we can just type that in and it will show us all the different options that it has. And it shows you how you can install it. So for example, if I wanted to just install Subfinder by itself, all I have to do is do -i Subfinder, or I could do a bunch of them by comma separation. So I can do Subfinder and maybe Nuclei like this. and that will go and install both of those tools for us. But before we do this, we got to do a couple more things though. We want to install all of them. So I'm going to just actually do the RA so it removes all the different tools that we have. It looks like everything's gone. And then now if we go back to this tool and run H, we're going to do two things. One, we're going to install it all. So I'm going to do the same command and give it -ia. But instead, now we're going to change our path by giving it the install go path right here. So it will just use the path that we created earlier. And this should install everything that we need by going to our go folder right here. That looks like it's working, and it's now installing every single one of these tools, with the exception of the third-party tools like MassDNS that some of these tools rely on, that you can see right here. It says, hey, you have to install Nmap, for example, on your own. To install Nmap on Linux, it's how you do it. And then it's going to tell us the same thing with MassDNS over here, just in case we don't have it on our system. So let's just quickly do a sudo apt-get and install Nmap. And that should be pretty quick. And now that we have installed this, we're going to quickly go to MassDNS, do a git clone of this project and download it on our system. We're going to go to the folder. We're going to type in make. If that's not installed, we have to kind of install the build essentials for Ubuntu. That should be pretty quick. Let's install it really quickly. And now that we have it installed, we can do a make, and that should quickly install MassDNS for us. And hopefully this is the last thing that we have to do. Looks like this is not the right folder. We actually have to go to bin and do MassDNS like this. And it is in there. So I'm just going to quickly CP this into our folder here with user/bin. So now every time I type in MassDNS, it's going to run it for us and let us use it properly. So we have everything set up. Now let's jump into the moment that you've been waiting for, and that is how to use all of these tools that are created by Project Discovery and how to build a methodology around it. So let's just quickly run this tool one more time and do an install, and let it show us all the tools that we have. It looks like everything is already set up here. The first one that I want to talk about is AIX, and I don't think we'll need this one per se. All you have to do is export your key from whatever model you want to use, and it will just allow you to work with different models. So example, if you wanted to use something like GPT-4, you can just go -G4, and then your prompt hello, and that will come back and probably say hello back to us, and so on. So it's really, really cool if you want to kind of like take all of your Recon data and then feed it to some AI to do something cool for you. That is not in the scope of this video. Drop me a comment saying AI if you want. I'll make something on that. But for now, I want to kind of make sure we kind of cover all these different tools and not just skip through them. The next one I want to look at is AlterX, ASN map, and so on. But to do this, I've actually created some really, really cool labs. We're going to quickly launch into them and show you how this works and use some of these tools to populate data for us and then eventually create a methodology around it all. When it comes down to Recon, it is usually divided into two main pillars. The first one being asset discovery and the second one being content discovery, and these two go hand in hand. The goal of asset discovery is to find as many assets that we can hack on. These are your domains, subdomains, your IP addresses, everything that could be something that we can attack. You can also put something like port scanning and getting the application on running on other ports within this bucket over here. The second bucket on the other side is the content discovery part. This is where you gather information. This is where you look for content to hack on. This is where you do Google dorking, or even you go as far as brute forcing for files in directory, or scraping JavaScript files, or just simply crawling the website using tools like Katana by Project Discovery. So let's first start with asset discovery. I have done a bunch of videos on this one, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's likely the same approach, especially if you're just getting started. But the first thing you want to do is just get as many domains and subdomains as we can. So in this case, we have this lab right here, but obviously this domain isn't the only domain that they use. Typically what you would get is a domain like ctfio.com for that company, but in this case, because it's a lab, the whole domain becomes peach.ctfio.com, and now we want to attack everything behind this domain. You can go in here and type in subfinder-d and give it a domain. This will not work on this lab because this is a custom lab. The domains aren't going to be online, but this is typically the first thing you do. I have a video on this, go check it out. But the point here is to find subdomains, and honestly, the best thing to do with Subfinder is to actually go into the configs right here and look for Subfinder, and there is a configuration file right here that you can set up that actually works with different sources. I highly recommend populating data for this. So for example, if we go actually into the providers right here, you put your API key right here. I highly recommend doing this because even if you are using a free API key, the chances of getting more subdomains and better data is a lot higher than doing it without. So please do me a favor. Don't just run Subfinder-d like this. without configuring your provider configuration file. Do it like this and then add the -all, so it goes through all of these sources that they have available and looks through them for specific domains and subdomains that you're providing. So this is the first step. Usually we will skip this. Super easy. You should know how to do this already, but just in case you didn't know, this is an option. The next thing you can do is using Shuffle DNS. Shuffle DNS allows you to actually brute force for these different domains. And I will show you a better example of this later, but because we don't want to rely on open source intelligence or OSINT, we're just going to quickly run this using Shuffle DNS. The really cool thing about all of the project discovery tools is that if you go to their documentation, they give you examples on how to run them every single time. So if you go down here, they actually tell you, hey, this is how you do it at a basic level, and it will tell you how to use it. The first thing that's really important about this is to have resolvers. There's a bunch of different tools out there that you can do this with. Honestly, I have a whole video on how to subdomain brute force. Also go check it out because it would be very long to put it in here. But what you want to do is get some resolvers. I know Trickest has some really good ones. So we're going to type in Trickest, resolvers, go into here and just quickly download the latest one that was updated 11 hours ago. Let's make sure. Let's do this one actually. I'm going to go to raw and then just go into here and do a wget. Put that in here and do it. You can see now I have two files. I just created this word list for the sake of this example. If you want some good word lists as well, you can look for seclist. On GitHub, they have some really good ones right here. You can use this one, or you can look for the asset notes word list as well. They're also really good, and I highly recommend having both of those on deck. So we have these right now. What we want to do here is go back to here, and we're just going to do a shuffle DNS, and we're going to grab our domain from our lab, go into here, and we're just going to give this to it. Our list is our domains. Actually, we don't want to give it a list. We want to give it a word list. So we're going to do a word list and then our resolvers. Hopefully that works. And we want to do mode. Let's just see, make sure what they do. It's resolve. Actually, we're doing a brute force. So we're going to do mode brute force. And now it's going to look for, it's going to actually use mass.dns and quickly come back and say, hey, these are all the domains that I have found. This is the first step of us finding some applications and domains that exist within this. So please just remember that if you're looking for subdomains, there's going to be a lot of times that Subfinder would find these. There's going to be some of them that don't have an SSL cert, for example, or maybe it's behind a wildcard, which I'll show you later on. That will not just come up. So you have to use brute forcing to find those. And this is an example of it and how we're finding it. And now that is ready, I'm just going to dump all of this into a file. We can actually do a -o domains.txt one more time, and I'm going to add silence so none of the writings show up. And if we do this, it should write to a domains.txt for us, and we have a list of all of those now. So let's just make sure we run it one more time so you can see what it looks like. Support API www, and then there's also a DB. Let's just make sure we have it all in there. Perfect. Everything is set up. We need to now find more stuff with this. So there's two options here. Typically what you see a lot of hackers do is they'll just take all these subdomains and they start doing port scanning and then directory brute forcing. But honestly, there's one more thing that you should do before you move on to the next phase. The next phase of Recon, especially when it comes to asset discovery, is to look at permutations. These are the different environments in which these applications could exist. So think of these as if you have an app and then maybe this app has a QA instance, has a dev instance, or even some sort of an API or an admin backend attached to it. And what you can do with AlterX, I'm going to show you in just a sec, is allow these different keywords to be added together to create these different permutations. So now we're taking a different word list, give it a list of all the domains that we already have, and we're saying, hey, can you find different combinations of maybe APIs, dev, QA, and so on, and list all of them, and then help me resolve and see which one of them actually exists. And to do that, we're going to need to use AlterX, which you can just call it like this. All you have to do with AlterX is have your subdomains, which is our domains.txt, and then you can have AlterX, just feed it to AlterX, and it will give you a list of all these domains that exist. This entire list that is being shown doesn't necessarily mean that they all exist. It just means that it came up with all these different combinations that you can try and see which one of them actually resolve. So you have this list. Now we're going to add this to a file. So we're going to do a t-a that just puts everything in a file for us. And we say subdomains dnsx.txt. And now we have subdomains like this. We can test and see which one of these actually exists, and then we can move to our next phase. But before I show you quickly how to resolve all these, let me show you something really cool that it allows you to do also using AlterX, and that is also the configuration file and the permutation. So if you see right here, there is this YAML file. I'm going to actually open it up in Nano, Shame on me for not using Vim. But what you can see here is the different configurations. So you can actually create your own things here if you wanted to. So you can say, hey, I want to be the word, a dash sub, maybe the word dot sub. These are all the different combinations that it creates. But please keep in mind that this is not really the only way. You can add your own custom way of doing this, especially if you find something that your target does that's different than what they have in here. The other thing is you can also use their keywords here. Obviously, these are not all the best words that you have. You can actually just use the -p and actually allow the application to use your personal word list that you have within your box. So there's just all the options that you have with AlterX, but I want to make sure I cover that so you know how to take this further and use it even more. And bonus point, if you want to do some homework, look at the enrich option. Let me show you really quickly. It's actually pretty cool. It takes a list of all the different word lists that you have and it extracts the words from the input. Do that on your own, not a part for this video. If you want to see a video on it, comment. I probably won't make it, but you should try it out and let me know what you think. It is a cool option that they have on there, but for now, we're going to go back to AlterX right here. And now that we have it already, we're going to use DNSX, another tool created by Project Discovery that allows us to see whether or not these websites resolve. So if I run this like that, it's going to come back and say API is there, API staging is there, API prod is there. There's a dev-API as well, and it's just going to go through all of them and say, hey, these are the ones that I think connect to some application or something is on there, and you can take a look at these later on. So this is one option you can do it. The other thing that you can do, honestly, is instead of just taking all these subdomains, putting them into a file and just going about it, is all you have to do is do cat subdomains. Actually, one more time, cat domains. Remember, these are the domains that we have, and we can actually just feed it to AlterX like this, AlterX, and then DNSX to make it a whole lot easier. Or even you can go better than this. If you don't want to do it, you can do something like shuffle DNS or subfinder -all-d, for example, and give it your domain.com and not the domains.txt, and then just feed it to AlterX and DNSX all over again. But for now, we're going to just run it like that so I can show you what it looks like. And you can see immediately it's just going to start giving us all these different applications and domains that exist. So you can just save some time by just piping these into each other. This is what's really cool about Project Discovery, is that they have thought about these, that you can pipe the results of one tool into another, and just have all these one-liners that add up and create something that you can hack on. So this is where typically a lot of people go wrong and they kind of give up on asset discovery and they just stop at this stage. The thing that I like to do usually is, instead of using HTTPX like most people do and look for open ports and applications, I like to actually do a port scan and feed all of this data that we have into something like Naabu and have it scan for open ports that can have additional applications for us. So now we're going to use Naabu. You can also do it like I mentioned with HTTPX. I'll show that in just a bit, but Naabu is way better, I think. And then we're going to look at open ports that exist on these different machines. All right, so what we can do now is we can just cat our domains, send it to DNSX, and then maybe do Naabu like this. It's like Naabu isn't found, so we're going to do a quick install of Naabu. And it says we need to actually run this command so we can install libcap for it really quickly. libpcap, actually, it is what it is. So we're going to install it. Now that this is installed, we're going to run naabu-h. And this is how it looks. Tons of different options. Honestly, you probably want to spend a little bit of time to work on this. This host discovery is probably really, really cool to try. I'm just going to call out a couple of things. But at a basic level, what we want to do is we want to just scan for ports. And to do that, I'm just going to look for the keyword port. So we're going to give it the host that we want to scan. So dash host or -l to give it a list. And then if you want to do ports, it's just a -p, or we can just do top ports that they have, which is about 100 of them. I think actually that'll be a really good one to do, but you can also exclude ports like maybe 22 if you want to look for SSH, for example. And then we can just look at CDNs and that kind of stuff. I want to skip all this because I want to just quickly get some data. So what I'm going to do now is cat our file, and then for the ports, we're going to do the top ports that we agreed to. So I'm just going to copy top ports, and we're going to put that in here, and maybe we'll exclude a port, for example, just to show you how it looks. I want to exclude ports, so it's EP. We're going to just EP22 in case SSH is open, and now it's going to run this, and it looks like something is wrong. We're going to do -p over here. Maybe that will work. There we go. That didn't work either. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me just do top ports to make sure I have it right. It looks like we want to do, oh yeah, so it takes a string. So it says full, 100 or 1,000. So that's why it's not working. So we're going to go back again and we're going to do top ports. Let's go back. Oh, I'm doing too many things. And then we're going to take this -p out. And I'm just going to do the top 100 just to show you how it looks. and let's see what it finds. So it looks like it did find a ton of stuff. It found some stuff on 443, which is the default port, but it looks like there is a couple of things on port 8443, 999, and 3000. So now we went from just getting a list of domains to getting permutations to doing DNSX to see which ones resolve, and to doing Naabu and writing these ports that are available. So what I want to do next is I actually want to write this out to a -o and say open ports.txt and let it run one more time so we have it all in a file. So now we can take all of them and start feeding them into the other tools that we have. Maybe do some identification using HTTPX, maybe do some Katana to find some more content, and so on. And now that we have this, if we do cat open ports, these are all the domains that we have with the corresponding applications on these different ports. Obviously, we're using one IP address, so we are hosting multiple things on multiple domains, but in a lot of cases, these will not be the same. So you're going to find an open port from one application and it's not going to be open on the other one. Sometimes it may take longer because you're doing more ports, you have more lists and things like that. But this is just to show you the gist of how to do all of these and how you can just, pipe these into each other and get more and more data. Now that we have all of this, the next option here is to figure out what we want to do next. Do we want to do some information gathering, or do we want to just simply go and find content to hack on? And we can do both. I've done a video on HTTPX. This takes a lot of time to explain because it's such a massive tool and great tool, but I've used it a bunch of times. If you want to see a full video on HTTPX, drop a comment saying HTTPX. I know I keep asking you to drop me comments. It is for me to understand what videos to make next and what you guys want to learn about. So drop me a comment, let me know, because if I make a video, if I include all of that right now in this video, it will take too long. But just at a really super high level, thing that you can do with HTTPX, that is that you can actually just get it to show you things like the title, for example, the content length, or even maybe look at the redirect if it goes somewhere that you want the location, for example. I'm just going to skip all of that because it's too much for this and we don't need a lot of this stuff. But I'm just going to show you, before I do this, some of the options using the -H. And if you look here, this is typically where these are the things that I look for. It depends on how deep you want to go with your Recon, but honestly, getting the status code and then getting the title and the ASN or the IP itself is probably pretty good. So I'm just going to go back to our tool again right here, and we're going to do HTTPX. Let's actually just do open ports and do HTTPX and grab the title, and we agree to do the status code, and we're going to do maybe the content length. And the reason why I do the content length is to see if it's a blank page, if it's a big page, what's all on that. And if we do that really quickly, you're going to see that it's going to come back and just give us all of these different results. You can see some of these don't have titles. Some of them have a title in them, for example. One of them has a PHP-MyAdmin. The other thing that you can do actually is do location, and that would actually tell you where it's getting redirected to. So it looks like API staging is going to API staging dash or slash. So that's probably why it's doing that. Or we can actually do something like a follow redirect. So if we wanted to follow the open redirect, we can do an FR. So we do -FR now. And if we look now, it looks like it's following it and it just stops right there. So this is kind of what you do to get an overview of all the assets that you have found before you start digging into them and looking at them. Honestly, one of the things that I do in this stage is I want to look for things that look interesting to me. So the title here is something that is interesting to me. So if I see something that says FOMART with the DB like that, I'm going to look at it like maybe that's interesting to me because it has a title. PHP-MyAdmin or any third-party devices or tools like Grafana, PHP-MyAdmin, Jenkins, anything that is developed by somebody else is a really good place to look for CVEs or actually look for weak credentials. And then we have all these different ones that we can actually list by doing -O HTTPX.txt. I'm not going to just do this again where I actually launch the domains.txt, but I want to kind of show you what it looks like. If you really wanted to get fancy with this, you can actually do this and then just do an HTTPX SC title FR location, for example, and just tack on more and more of these commands and just get all the outputs of it written out as you go. So just remember, you have that option. I want to keep showing you this. This is what makes Project Discovery Tool so cool, but you can also do that so you don't have to take the output, run the next command, you can just pipe them all into each other. I refer to what we just did there as our information gathering. What we're doing simply here is just getting as much information about our hosts as we can. These are things like the title, maybe where they redirect, maybe some of the content length, content type, and all these different information that could give us some high-level overview of all the applications that we can hack on. But now what we need to do is take those URLs and find some content using something like a crawler, which I'm going to use Katana in this case from Project Discovery, to find content on those websites and see what are some of the different applications or functionality that is available to us. So let's just jump in and run Katana on this very quickly. So what we're going to do quickly in Katana is just say katana-u and give it the URL where we want to crawl. So we're going to get this really quickly, and it's just going to go through and just rip out all these URLs, mostly JavaScript files that are on this website. But if we quickly go back to our website here, we can see that there are other pages like products over here. There is a login. There is search, so we can search for tests, for example, but none of these are showing up within our crawl, and that's because we're not just crawling everything yet. The cool thing about Katana is that it also allows you to parse through these JavaScript files. For example, with the -jc, it will just enable endpoint parsing or crawling the JavaScript files and giving us more endpoints, or just doing JSL, which also enables parsing in JavaScript files. But this one is a little bit more memory intensive, but we're gonna just give it a try so I can show you what the difference is when you do JC versus the JSL option. You can see it's doing the same exact files, but this time we did find an API route under API users auth. That's still great. We found one more endpoint, but not all of them. So we're just gonna give it a sec. Nothing comes back. We can just add our JSL or JSLoose on here. And now it's going to find even more stuff by parsing all these JavaScript files and seeing what's in each of those and then linking it to us, which includes also shop admin, some products right here, checkout, and so on. So keep that in mind when you're crawling. You have to make sure you are going deep in these and not just doing them the out of the box method, but just giving it -u. And obviously you can go deeper even by doing the -d, which let me show you right here is the depth of where how far you crawl is currently set at 3. Maybe we can do something like 5 here and see if it finds anything more. I don't think it will, but it is good practice to do that as well, just to have that in there. So this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Maybe we'll find something more, who knows. So this is just the basics of being able to crawl a website to find assets and things like that. And obviously what we were doing earlier with just running all of our tools. So you remember we're doing subdomain discovery, sending it to our permutations, Naabu, and all that stuff, which we got the open ports.txt, and we can just simply pass that to Katana and just have it crawl with the same options. And now it's just running all of those and giving us a list of all of these different endpoints that are available for each and every one of these assets that we have found. There is one more aspect to running Katana, and this is what I see a lot of bug hunters actually fail, and that is running Katana while you're authenticated to another website or the website that you want to crawl. A lot of times, for example, on this website right here, you will have the capability of logging in and seeing more content behind it. So if I'm running this by itself right now like this, it will give me some content, but honestly, this is only the things that we see while we're unauthenticated. So if we quickly log in, and we can see that we have a random ticket here, but now I want to quickly open up my Kaido and go up here to our latest, grab our session and go to Katana one more time. But this time, instead, we're going to give it a custom header with the -h and say, I want to give it this cookie value right here. We need to make sure we put cookie. So we have our cookie value right here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say -xhr. So it looks for those requests within the DOM. Maybe we want to do JSL. And then I'm going to do the -aff, which automatically fills the forms that are on these websites. So if there is some weird form that it may just have some API call attached to it, it will just catch on to that as well. So we're just doing 3 different methods, and this is just a catch-all. So if there is any of those 3 or all those 3 on that website, it's going to catch them all. And then we're going to run it really quickly. And now, as we can see, it's getting us API tickets, ticket, user logout, and it just generated a bunch of different content that we do have within this website. So the next time you find a massive application that you want to go deep on and without doing any subdomain enumeration and that kind of stuff, you can always log in, grab your cookie value, grab your authentication header, feed it to Katana, and have it crawl and just spit out all the different functionality that is in there. But now let's take this one step further and do something very, very cool that could also potentially just lead on to finding vulnerabilities. And that is by just simply running the same exact command that we did earlier. And we're going to add our options to it. But instead, now we're going to simply just add these to HTTPX and say, get the content type, get the content length, and maybe the status code as well. And when we run this, it's going to immediately come back and tell us, hey, I have found some of these endpoints, and some of them are coming back as text HTML. For example, you can see this one came back at 401 because we got logged out apparently. This one is a HTML. And so on. So the cool thing about this is if it finds, for example, some sort of a API that is no longer there. Maybe it's in the JavaScript file where it was removed. Maybe we're getting data from another tool. What I want to show you here is when you do crawling, when you do passive reconnaissance to get URLs, it is very, very helpful to run HTTPX and see which are accessible and what is the content type in them. And if some of these API calls come back with the content header or the content type being HTML, we know that if we could get some HTML in there, we can possibly get JavaScript to execute and get XSS at the end of the day. So these are really, really cool small details that you can add to your Recon workflows when you're approaching multiple applications, whether you're crawling in while you're actually logged in, whether you're not doing it that way. It is really cool things to just tack on to each other and just get more results and more leads that you can hack on. The point of Recon here is to just find leads. It's not to just automate everything and have nuclei run across. The point is to just run tools, get things that are interesting to you, give you more things to hack on, and also automatically in between maybe generate leads that could potentially lead into vulnerabilities for you. So as a homework, if you want to go try it out, there is a cross-site scripting on that application that I just showed you. Go ahead and see if you can find it by crawling it, looking at the headers, and then seeing if you can exploit a cross-site scripting within one of those routes. So far I've shown you how to just use every tool one by one. There's a couple more things I want to show you before we move on, but before we do that, let me show you what an actual workflow would look like if we were to use a domain like PayPal to run these tools. I'm not going to run this because it will take forever to do it. I've been trying to do this for this video for a while, and honestly, it takes forever. But what I want to show you really quickly is how you can actually run this regardless of your domain finder. So if you're using Subfinder, you can do that. If you want to use Chaos, which is one of their databases that gives you access to public programs. For bug bounty programs, you can use that as well. If you want to see a full video on this, go check out last week's video. But what I'm doing right here is I'm saying, hey, grab every domain from PayPal, and I'm going to give it the silent tag so it doesn't show me any of the signatures of the tools. And then I'm gripping for API. Maybe you don't want to do grep API, you can do the entire database. Then I'm telling AlterX to find all the different permutations for us. Then we're going to send this to DNSX to see which one of those actually have a valid record. And then we're going to run Naabu. The reason why I'm not doing Naabu first is because once you generate all that data, it's just going to send requests to even records that aren't really accessible. So if you do DNSX first, what's going to happen here is going to look at it and see, hey, does this domain resolve? If it does resolve, then I want to look at Naabu, and then Naabu is going to do the port scan, and then we're going to get all of our results for that. Once you do this workflow, you have two options. Now, one is you can feed it to Katana and have it just crawl all these websites. But sometimes things like APIs or legacy apps or even some of the newer applications may not be able to give you data using Katana, or maybe just a blank page that doesn't show anything, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have any data behind that website. This is where passive reconnaissance is very, very crucial. And what we're going to do really quickly on the screen here is I'm going to actually show you what URL Finder looks like, and you can actually use URL Finder to hit these different sources and gather data for it. So let's just say we wanted to do this for a company like PayPal.com. I can just run this, and what it's going to do is it's going to take a couple of seconds. It's going to reach out to all those different resources that it has access to, and then give us a list of index data that it has found. And we can also just take this and feed it to HTTPX. And as soon as this is done, what we're going to get is a bunch of these URLs. Some of these you can see it's kind of already a little bit of like weird characters in there. It may not be useful, but some of the other ones, if I scroll all the way up here, for example, let's go to the top of this. Some of these aren't too bad, and you can actually look at some of these and see if there are any vulnerabilities within them. But honestly, this is not the method that I like to do. It is an approach. It is really, really good for when you're looking for a needle in the haystack. So for example, maybe you're looking for a specific parameter, maybe you're looking for an open redirect, something that you want to use in the chain. This is a great way to take all of your subdomains, feed it to URL Finder, and have it passively look for things for you. The other option is Katana, but you also have to make sure you configure it properly. Maybe you give it your session token and your cookies, and this way you can authenticate and run this when you are getting all this data. So remember, when you're done with running all of your tools, getting all your permutations, getting DNSX results, running Naabu, and you get to this crossroad, you have to pick which one you want to do. You can also do both and then combine the two and look at the results together and then feed it to HTTPX and so on. So that was all of it. I hope I covered enough for you to kind of get an idea of a small or simple recon methodology that you can do. Obviously, you can take all of this and configure it differently. I highly suggest you go and look at all the different options for each of these tools, customize them and tailor them in a way that you want to use when it comes down to recon. There are a couple other tools like TLSX, CloudList, and ASN Map, and a couple other ones that I haven't used in this video. So if you want to see a part 2 of how I use those tools as well, drop me a comment saying part 2, and I'll probably make another video on that. But I want to keep it simple for this one, kind of show you the basics without going too wide with recon, and hopefully you got to learn something and you can use in your day-to-day when you're doing some bug bounty hunting. All right, that's it. Big thank you to our sponsors, Project Discovery and Hostinger. Go into the description, click on the links down below, and do me a massive favor. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, become a Nahomie. We're almost at 200,000 subscribers. Let's get there by the end of the year. All right, that's it. See you in next week's video. Peace.